This is part one of two parts. We're talking about sharpening your communication skills. You might say, well, I'm not a public speaker. If you are a leader, you better be working on your speaking skills. The first thing we need to recognize is most of us are not nearly as good as we think we are. Just watch a video of yourself sometime and you're going to recognize, oh my gosh, I'm not that good. I do this all the time and it's incredibly humbling. Sometimes I'll ask someone who spoke, I'll say, how did it go? And that person will say, well, I really liked it. The bottom line is it doesn't matter how we feel about our speaking. The question is, was it effective? Well, how'd you do? Well, I liked it. I don't care if you liked it or not. Are we effective as communicators? George Bernard Shaw says this. I love this quote. He says, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. Let me say it again. He said, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that has taken place. Three thoughts, if you're jotting this down. I always tell myself this. Just because you say something doesn't mean they heard it, believe it, or will do it. I tell our communicators all the time, just because you said it does not mean that they heard it, believe it, or will do it. You can say it all day long, but that doesn't mean you're effective in communication. How you say it matters. Just because you said it doesn't mean they heard it, believe it, or will do it. So, when communicating, one of the first rules of effective communication is this. We must never, ever be me-centered. We're always you-centered in communication. Let me say it again. We are not me-centered. We are you-centered in communication. Why is this? Because people are not thinking about me. They're thinking about themselves. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. It's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. Let me give you some examples. For illustration, at our church, we have something that's called Open Door. It's a place for new people to come and to find out how they can use their gifts, get involved in the church. So let me give you kind of two invitations. The first one is going to be a me-centered or a we-centered or an us-centered invitation. The second one is a you-centered one. So the first one is me-centered. I might say, hey, everybody, I'd love to invite you to come to Open Door to find out about our church. We want you to know about our history, what we believe, how you can help us do what we're called to do. Okay, that's a me-centered way of inviting them. Now, in communication, here's basically saying the same thing, but from a you-centered point of view. We might say, hey, what I want you to know is you matter to us. Would you consider joining us at a thing we call Open Door? Why? Because we want to get to know you. We want to hear your story. You might have questions or you have ideas. We would love to help you get plugged in so you can make a difference. Okay? Essentially, the same announcement, but from two totally different perspectives. The most effective communicators are not going to be me-centered. We're going to be you-centered in communication. Now, you may not be announcing something at a church. You may be running a meeting. You may be pitching some kind of idea at your office or whatever. When people roll into the meeting or when they roll into your planning session, let me tell you what they might be thinking about. They might be thinking, oh my gosh, I'm late. I hope I'm not in trouble. They might be thinking, how in the world am I going to get one kid to soccer and another kid to dance tonight? They might be thinking, I'm really mad because my husband didn't say goodbye to me this morning. They might be thinking, I hope my boss, that means you, doesn't have some stupid idea that's going to burn out in 2 weeks. In other words, what they're doing is they're thinking about themselves. What we need to do is grab their attention all the time because they're thinking about themselves. The most effective communicators will be you-centered in communicating. Now, before you communicate anything, you're going to want to answer these three questions. Crazy important. Never forget this. Before you communicate anything, you want to answer these three questions. Number one, what do I want people to know? Number two, what do I want them to feel? Number three, what do I want them to do? What do I want them to know, feel, and do? Again, it may seem obvious, this is what I want them to know, but you have to start there and be very clear on exactly what you want them to know. Then, that's where most people stop. You don't just want them to know something, but you want them to feel something. Why? Because emotion moves people to action. What do you want them to feel? You may want them to feel motivated. You may want them to feel challenged. You may want them to feel hopeful. You may want them to feel kind of righteously angry. But the emotion is what's going to move them to action. So not just what do I want them to know, but also what do I want them to feel, and then what is the when? What do I want them to do? And this is really important. If you can't define it, they won't do it. If you can't define it, they won't do it. So we're not just making an announcement, we're leading people to a desired outcome. We're not just leading a meeting, we're moving people toward a specific focus. What do I want them to know? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? We're never just communicating. We're always leading. We're always leading. We're always leading. Great leaders are great communicators. Great communicators are great leaders. We never just communicate. We're always leading. Just because you said it doesn't mean they heard it, believe it, or will do it. So when we communicate, we start with the listener in mind. We're always you-centered in our communication, never me-centered in communication. And before we communicate anything, we're going to ask, what do I want them to know? What do I want them to feel? What do I want them to do? Because if we can't define it, they'll never, ever do it. Just because you say something doesn't mean that your listeners heard it, believe it, or will do it. Let me give you what I call 4 communication languages. 4 communication languages. When you communicate, you want to communicate with your appearance. Number 2, your body language. Number 3, your words. Number 4, your emotions. When you communicate with your appearance. Your appearance says a lot or doesn't say much. Okay? Your body language, your words, and your emotion. Let me talk about this and I'll demonstrate some things. This may sound silly, but make sure that your outfit matches the message that you want to communicate. And I know this won't always matter, but let's say you're going to go raise, $50,000 to start some business. If you come in, you didn't shave, you're wearing a baseball hat backward, or you're a lady in yoga pants and your hair pulled back in a ponytail, you're not communicating a real clear message. And this is important. You want your outfit, your appearance to match the tone of the communication. For example, if I'm talking about vision, or I'm, bringing some new initiative, quite honestly, I often wear black, some dark solid, because I want to communicate the authority and confidence. If I want to have a real relational conversation, or I'm talking about small groups at the church, I'm going to wear blue because it's a relational color. If I want to come in buddy to buddy, I may be in a t-shirt or in a plaid shirt or something like that. Why? Because I want my outfit to match the tone of communication. That's appearance. Let's talk about body language, and this is really important. You want to grab attention, and and I'm going to stand up. If you're not watching, it'll be a little bit weird, but when you communicate what you want to do, if you're stepping back, you're communicating fear or a lack of confidence. If you're leaning forward, you're communicating a sense of authority and confidence in your communication. A big thought is this: you want to speak appropriately for the size of the crowd. For example, right now, we're kind of like one-on-one, and so I'm not raising my voice, I'm not going crazy. If you're at a table with 3 people, you want to be conversational. If you're in a room with 100 people, you're going to want to have a little more action because it demands it. If I'm in a stadium of 20,000 people, I'm going to be going, being really enthusiastic and using my body language in a more extreme way to help me communicate the point. So what you want to do is you want to speak appropriately for the size of the crowd. If you're doing a presentation, you want to make sure that you're moving but not pacing. A lot of times speakers will pace. They look like a lion in a cage. What you want to do is you want to move. What I like to do is I like to make sure I'm talking to everybody in the room. So I'll plant in the middle. I'll take a few steps. I'll talk to people on the side. I'll go back, plant in the middle, go to the other side, stop. And you want to make sure you're making eye contact. That way everyone in the room feels like you're talking just to them. You want to make your hands work for you and not against you. A good thing to do is to actually watch yourself on video and turn the volume off and see, is it pleasing to watch? Do I feel like I'm communicating something, or am I not? Whenever I'm working with communicators, sometimes I'll make them do about a 3-minute communication with no words. They have to do everything like charades and using their body language to say what their body language to be consistent with what their words are actually saying. If you're not a seasoned communicator, you'll want to think through nonverbal communication before you ever go up there. Think about where you want your hands to be, what kind of statement you want to make, when you're going to be big, when you're going to be small, when you're coming from the heart, when you're passionate, and you want to think through that. Then after a while, it'll simply become second nature to you. And then watch for any kind of distracting movements. Don't go to the face. Like if you touch your face anytime you're in a crowd that looks really weird, we're not going to cross our arms unless we're making a real point. We're not going to put our hands in our pockets, so watch for distracting body language. Then with the words, what I like to do is this. I like to tell people what I'm going to tell them, and then I like to tell them, and then I want to tell them what I told them, okay? Repetition helps people to remember. So here's what we're going to talk about today. Then we talk about it. Here's what we talked about today. And you'll notice I do this on all the podcasts. I wrap it back up and I repeat. Why? Because I really believe that will help you retain the information even better. We're going to work on clear transitions. If we're choppy, if we don't look like we know where we're going, people have really short attention spans, and we will lose them, and we have to go and re-grab them. We want to create moments when we can, or even better, just allow moments to happen. Anytime you start to sense there's emotion, go with the emotion. Let it flow. Use silence. Just be quiet. Okay? Let that work for you. Don't be afraid of silence. And then, like I said, repeat often. Speak clearly and repeat often. Let's talk about emotions for a minute. When you're speaking, change the pace of your speaking. In fact, probably the number one thing I work with in young communicators is like, you had the same tone, the same volume, the same pace throughout the whole time. You've got to change it up. At some points, you're going to want to speak a little bit faster. Other times, you're going to want to raise your voice. Sometimes, you're going to want to slow down and be really, really quiet. Variety helps keep people engaged. Use your facial expressions as a tool. If you lose people's attention, and you're going to know when you do, change it up. You know, do something louder, slow down, change the pace, be funny, just say, hey, you know, whatever. But when you start to lose people, work to bring them back. Help them feel, let them laugh. Whenever they're laughing, shut up and let them laugh. Laughter is one of the greatest tools a communicator has. In my world, people will walk in, and you can tell they're skeptical. And if they're laughing, what happens is they're more open to whatever's coming next. And again, don't speak over the laughter. Whenever they're laughing, just shut up, let them laugh, and then you can even get another laugh by saying something that's even easier to get a laugh, and play off that. Use it as a tool to disarm people so you can help communicate whatever the message is that you really want them to hear. Now, almost finished. Two most important qualities when you're communicating. Two most important qualities will be confidence and humility. Confidence and humility. How do those go together? Those have to go together, okay? If you're cocky, they will not like you. They will not trust you, okay? If you're confident and humble, they will embrace you. If you're a spiritual communicator, okay? I know not all of you are, all of you are, but if you are, your humanity connects and your godliness inspires. If you are holier than thou, you will turn people off so quickly. You have to bring the real you. Your humanity connects, but then your pursuit of what's right, that inspires people. I like to say this, that we may impress people with our strengths, but we connect with people through our weaknesses. Let me say it again. We may impress people with our strengths, but we connect through our weaknesses. So don't feel like you have to be perfect. Don't feel like you have to be amazing. Just be yourself. Be transparent. Talk about your struggles. Talk about what you're learning, how you're growing, what's going on. And that authenticity is going to help connect with hearts. And when you connect with hearts, you can communicate truth. The single best thing you can do is be yourself. Be yourself. Be yourself. If you are dorky, don't you dare try to be cool. You will fail like crazy. If you're 55 years old, don't try to act 22. You'll look stupid. If you're 22, don't be afraid of being young. It's okay. Work with it. Just be who you are. Don't be insecure. You have everything you need to do everything you're supposed to do. Then, just start communicating all the time, everywhere. The best leaders are great communicators. Here's where we're going. Here's what we do. Say it with confidence and humility, and you can make a big difference.